Welcome to SAT TV News. I am Larry Larrock, your presenter. In our top stories, agricultural leaders engage in training session. Tourism body Lords Liat. Trey Radell, Florida Republican, urged cocaine congressman to quit. And in sports, Dive Dominica, Harlem United and Wood City Strikers off to winning starts. Details of these will follow. Welcome back. Every year, the President's Charities Foundation holds a dinner to raise funds with proceedings going towards charitable organizations on the island. On Tuesday, November 26, the foundation visited the Dominica Infirmary to hand over their annual Christmas donation. One representative of the infirmary explained the objective of the institution.
Here at the Dominica Infirmary, we care for the elderly, the underprivileged and the destitute elderly. Here is a home for the elderly, and we make here a better home away from home. In other words, where they were isn't as good as where they are now.
His Excellency President Charles Alvarez says it is a pleasure to give this donation to the institution.
The work which is done here is tremendously important and valuable to the country, to the residents and to their families, because it takes a major worry from the families whose relatives and parents are here.
According to the President, the residents there are well cared for and the facility provides a comfortable environment. Executive of the President Charities Foundation, following the donation, paid a visit to the wards where the residents are housed. In more news, on Monday, November 25th, an open forum for boys and men was held at the Public Service Union in an attempt to engage the male gender in discussions geared towards violence against women. The intention of this activity was to give young men a chance to speak, as they are usually depicted as the perpetrators. Mr. Lester Guy, psychologist and counselor at the National HIV and AIDS Response Unit and CARICOM member, who considers himself an advocate for women and women's rights, says there are a lot of verbal advocates when action too is needed.
Verbal advocates. There's a lot of verbal advocates around. People who are just talking. And for me, it's time that we get way past those verbal advocates, or the people who are passing on their SUVs, and I mentioned that sometime on the radio, some time back, passing on their SUVs and their Kias, and they see the young guys and the young women on the street, but they only seek them out when stuff like sexual needs need to be met.
According to Mr. Guy, a choice must be made in the fight against the violation of not just women's rights, but human rights. Acceptance of violence against women by men reinforces that what is being done is right, but if there is conflict or disagreement on the matter, he believes we will see a change.
But at the end of the day, the decision still lies on you. On me, on you. It lies on you. Because that is the most powerful thing that we have as human beings, is choice. To decide if I'm going to be aggressive, violent, against whoever it may be.
Crimes against women have always been around, but it has only now become a major issue because it is more blatant, forcing persons to address it. Adding to the discussion, Mr. Delroy Williams, UNDP, Caribbean Youth Think Tank member, relating our attitudes to the norms assumed by society, says, the separation of roles in society can later impact how men relate to women in the household.
We have certain roles that our society sees as male roles and or female roles. For instance, a young lady is supposed to stay home and wash the plates and look after the younger siblings, whereas the young man can run frivolously on the streets, play football until whatever hour, and comes in and has to give no account for his whereabouts. And this can impact not just our social upbringing, but later on in life how you relate to the woman in your household.
Mr. Williams feels As a nation that is slowly adapting to the Western civilization way of living and interacting, Dominicans need to shift from this fear of change. Meanwhile, President of the National Youth Council, Mr. Josiah Benoit, suggested that young people lack the knowledge of how to react to women.
At what stage of our life are we exposed to that lecture? How many of us remember really sitting down with our fathers or our mothers and being taught, you should treat a young lady like that, or if you want to invite a lady on a date, this is how you approach her?
This lack of knowledge, he says, leaves you to depend on the advice of your peers, whose knowledge base is about the same as yours. He therefore called on the parents to take better stock to educate young men on the value of women. In other stories, the University of the West Indies Open Campus Dominica will this week present the 8th annual Dame Eugenia Charles Memorial Lecture. Ms. Kimon Joseph, Marketing and Outreach Officer of the University of the West Indies Open Campus Dominica, has more details.
Ms. Cynthia Barrow-Giles, lecturer in political science at UWKville, will present the topic Men in Skirts, Gender in Democracy and Shaping the Nation, the Unfinished Democratic Agenda, during the 8th annual Dame Eugenia Charles Memorial Lecture on Thursday, the 28th of November 2013. And this lecture has been presented by the UWI Open Campus Dominica and the Fortune Hotel. Ms. Barrow-Giles will address the question, what contributions, if any, are women making and can women make in an active political participation in the Commonwealth Caribbean?
Ms. Gills will speak to the issue of women in the political landscape and look at how a paradigm shift in that regard can improve Caribbean Commonwealth politics. The lecture will give the audience a chance to ask questions and interact with Ms. Gills.
The Dame Eugenia Charles Lecture is essentially aimed at discussing socio-political issues in honor of Dame Eugenia Charles's memory. The lecture series is not so much to venerate Dame Eugenia Charles as it is to provide an avenue for people to be able to listen to research about particular socio-political topics and to be able to engage in meaningful conversation with the researchers. So this is the 8th one that we're doing, and we're very pleased that Ms. Cynthia Barrow-Giles can come at a time when Dominica and indeed the world is celebrating women and women achievements and the empowering of women. As you know, today the DNCW was celebrating empowering women and stamping out domestic violence. So being able to speak about women's participation in the political process and active participation as politicians in the Commonwealth Caribbean is really an extension of that celebration of Caribbean women and Caribbean women in Commonwealth Caribbean politics.
The lecture is free of charge and is open to the public. In other news, a training session took place on Tuesday, November 26, involving team leaders and extension officers from the Division of Agriculture of the 7 agricultural regions at the Office of Disaster Management, ODM. Extension Officer Mr. Felix Leslie noted, agricultural extension must be taught especially as we need to concentrate on agricultural development.
And so when you think agricultural development, it is imperative to think agricultural extension, because agricultural extension has that responsibility to carry out to farmers and those involved in agricultural development a message. That message must be clearly defined. That message must be understood by the messenger, which is the extensionist. And he or she must find a way to present that message in a way that the audience, the farmers, and those involved in agricultural development, so that they will understand that message. If our message is not clear and not understood, then it means that the people on the other end will have difficulty to receive that message.
Mr. Felix says, although extension officers have played their role over the years, there is much more to be accomplished. According to him, agricultural extension needs to be strengthened to make it more relevant to the needs in agricultural development.
In the days when CAEP functioned, there was training for extension. a diploma program, a degree program for extension. These things we believe it needs to come back. And so the new initiative, this initiative, is to revisit these areas to seek to bring back what we had in the past. If extension has to deliver, the University of the West Indies must play its part. And I'm happy that the University of the West Indies is spearheading and coordinating this effort to revitalize and strengthen agricultural extension.
Lecturer at the University of the West Indies, UWI, St. Augustine campus in the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension, Dr. Wayne Ganpat, PhD, noted, extension officers need to make sure they know the people they work with and how to motivate them.
The history of extension in Dominica, I would challenge somebody to write that history. Somebody who's good, anybody who has a little history. I'll tell you why. I've just written the history of extension in Trinidad and Tobago. And doing that opened my eyes to a whole lot of things. And I learned about the history of extension in some other parts of the Caribbean also. That's why I know some things about Dominica. But the Caribbean was a place of leadership for agriculture and extension in that part of the world, at that time. That's why the Imperial College of Tropical Agriculture was situated in St. Augustine, the place of research for the entire empire was situated in St. Augustine. All the research was done there for Indonesia and Ceylon and Australia and wherever it is. They had all the countries that were under the colonial government.
This, he said, shows the strong and rich history of agricultural extension officers in the Caribbean. According to Dr. Ganpat, we all need to position ourselves to be good extension officers.
Read the internet. Plenty of information out there. Talk to people. I want to mention the Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services that Mr. Leslie spoke about. Get on it, type it in, look at it, see all the programs they have. They have a whole lot of resources on extension. The Global Forum for Rural Advisory Services is an organization of a network of extension. It's an overarching network of a number of networks around the world. And the Caribbean has recently formed its network earlier this year, February, in St. Augustine. We formed our network, CAEPNet, Caribbean Extension Providers Network. And we aim to tap into that. And you all should, get into it and see how we could use the resources there to build our capacity here, right here in Dominica, to build your own personal capacity. They offer a lot of training opportunities and all that. So you could, probably go on to it and get some sponsorship and visit and upgrade yourself.
He went on to say, extension officers are very important to the development of agriculture, and this job must be taken seriously. In more stories, a local telecommunications company may soon experience a blackout after accumulating an electricity bill to DOMLEC, Dominica Electricity Services, of an alleged $1.5 to $1.7 million. Reports are that the telecommunications company has been struggling to make electricity payments as the company itself is in deep financial constraints and struggling to keep afloat. If any services of the company are disconnected, this would severely affect its ability to provide its services to its customers. In light of this, the management of SAT Telecommunications Limited would like to inform the public that this report is in no way referring to the company. And in court news, 2 persons who were found guilty of causing grievous bodily harm have been ordered to pay fines of $3,000 by the High Court. Jamal George, 26, was found guilty of causing grievous bodily harm to his ex-girlfriend Kim Peterson in October of 2010 outside of KFC. George had repeatedly punched Peterson in the face, which resulted in the backwards displacement of her right eyelid after she poured a bottle of Guinness on him while he was sitting in his car. The incident occurred in the presence of George's then-girlfriend and her infant son. Justice Stevenson said although George may have acted in self-defense to an extent, he must be punished as his actions had seriously impacted Peterson. Peterson was not awarded compensation in the High Court, as she has decided to seek compensation at the Civil Court. Meanwhile, in October, a 9-member jury found Shumel Christopher guilty of inflicting grievous bodily harm to Kathy Ferrara. In December of 2010, Christopher had returned from a trip and found Ferrara laying semi-nude in a bed with her then-deceased boyfriend, Alwyn DJ Bullet Robin. According to the evidence presented in court, Christopher threw alkali on Ferrara that caused damage to her eyes. Ophthalmologist Dr. Hazel Shillingford Ricketts testified that Ferrara had lost cells in both eyes. She also sustained injuries to her mouth. Christopher is expected to pay compensation to Ferrara, to be decided by Justice Stevenson on December 3, 2013. The first-time offenders must pay their fines by 31st May 2014 or in default spend 6 months in prison. This has been the local segment of the news. Coming up next, regional highlights.